If you're looking to get into film photography, this is a great place to start. I'm making this video to sort of explain what kind of film cameras are out there, what you should be looking for based on what you actually need, and some things to avoid. I've been taking photos since I was 2. Here's a picture. And that was actually also coincidentally my first film camera. I was born right at that era where film was still in use and was the standard for everyday photography, but on its way out. There's a lot of cameras out there. There's a lot of opinions out there around which cameras are best. So I wanted to make a video breaking down what do you actually need, what to avoid, and where you can save a little bit of money. You should think about what do you actually want to use your camera for. A lot of people just buy the best one or the one that their favorite YouTuber uses, or they just go straight for something like a Leica M6, which is great, an incredible camera, obviously, but it might not be the best for every possible scenario. For landscape versus street photography, 2 very different cameras would be ideal. So hopefully this video will explain some of the differences and some of the ways that you can save a little bit of money and end up with something that's better for your specific use case. The first thing that I want to say is that the best film camera is the one that's free. I would ask your parents, your friends, your family members, anyone you might know who was around during film photography's peak, if they have an old film SLR or something similar sitting in a closet somewhere. You might be surprised by what your parents have lying around. I got 3 of my main film cameras actually this way. My Pentax K1000, my Olympus OM1N, and my Nikon FM2 were all from family members. My K1000 was actually my mom's father's before it was hers, so it's on its 3rd generation in my family. Beyond saving money, it can be a great way to get a camera that's nicer than you might be otherwise able to afford. That money can instead be used on film, developing, or lenses. All the film cameras that I'm going to talk about today are 35mm film cameras. 120 does exist, and there are other formats even beyond that, but if you're just starting out, I would recommend starting with 35mm. Next up, we're going to talk about some of the overall different types of film cameras. There's not one specific kind that's best, and it all depends upon your scenario, price point, etc. But we're going to start off with point and shoots. As the name suggests, these are cameras where you simply point and shoot. They handle exposure, often they handle autofocus, all for you. Now, this can be a pro and it can be a con. It can be limiting because you sometimes want to have creative control over your exposure, sometimes you want creative control over your focus, but it can also be a pro, especially for street photography, casual photography of like family and friends. It can be nice to not have to worry about these things and just simply point the camera and take the picture. One downside to these cameras in the current age is that most of them are made out of plastic and they haven't always aged the best. A lot of my film cameras have cracks in them that I've had to repair with either tape, epoxy, glue. You got to get a little bit creative, but it is an unfortunate side effect of the build quality of the yesteryear and the fact that these plastics have just grown brittle from the sun and just from time. A lot of these cameras' electronics are now 30 or 40 years old, and they are less reliable than they were when they were new. And this is most true of point and shoots because they were cheaper and they've just not exactly stood the test of time quite as well. Another downside is that batteries for these cameras can be extremely weird and uncommon in today's age, and that means if your battery dies while you're on vacation, you might be out of luck. So definitely carry spares if your camera has a weird battery, but also consider looking for ones that take more standard sizes like AA's or AAA's. If you think that a point and shoot is right for you, I would encourage you to look at used options on eBay from reputable brands like Olympus, Minolta, Pentax, Nikon, Canon, any sort of camera brand that has an actual reputable name behind it. Look for old options that were made of the time period. Modern point and shoots do exist, but you pay a lot of money for not a lot of features, even if they might be more reliable. I'm going to give a quick mention here of film rangefinders. These are cameras where you look through a secondary lens on the side rather than the actual lens that you take the picture with. These cameras are more common among Leica. There's some Rolly cameras that are common, all 35mm, but I'm going to avoid them generally because these cameras are very, very desirable and can be quite expensive, and cheaper rangefinders can often have problems. There are some out there from the likes of Nikon and Canon, and if you can find them at a good price, definitely scoop them up. But I think your best bet is our next category, which is film SLRs, or single lens reflex cameras. So single lens reflex cameras are, generally speaking, interchangeable lens cameras that have a prism that lets you look through the actual lens that you take a picture with. This is a huge benefit when it comes to composing your shot, focusing, and creating a finished product. It allows you to actually look at what you're taking a picture of as opposed to looking sort of next to what you're taking a picture of, which is one of the problems with rangefinders. The other benefit to film SLRs is that it was by far the most common type of camera. For the sake of this video, I'm going to break down film SLRs into 3 categories: manual film SLRs, program mode SLRs, and autofocus program mode SLRs. So broadly speaking, manual focus, manual exposure SLRs often usually just have a simple light meter and are otherwise completely user controlled. So you have to set your aperture setting, your shutter speed, and your focus all by hand. This can be great for creative control and also limits the number of barriers between you and the picture. This is my favorite type of film camera, but if you're taking sports, action, wildlife, any sort of photography like that, and you intend to do it on film, I would encourage you to maybe consider some of the other options on this list that let the camera do some of the control and the work for you. Program mode and aperture priority and other types of auto exposure modes on film cameras let the camera handle some of the exposure work for you. So, like the name suggests, aperture priority lets you set the aperture and the camera sets the shutter speed to try to guess accurate exposure. The same thing is true of program mode, where you let the camera control both aperture and shutter speed to get optimal exposure. This can be helpful when you're on the go, street photography, anything that you need to happen quickly. You can just press the shutter, make sure you focus the lens, and you're good. Take the picture, and it'll usually come out okay. The downside is some of these program mode cameras don't actually have a full manual mode, meaning that, again, like point and shoots, you might not be able to grow into the camera to the same degree that you would want. The final and third category is autofocus cameras. There are a lot of film cameras with full autofocus, believe it or not. The first one, actually I have, it's a Minolta Maxim 7000. It's a ridiculous looking camera, looks straight out of like a RoboCop movie, but they handle autofocus for you, as well as usually they have a program mode to handle exposure, meaning that it is very similar to a point and shoot. You get all the benefits of that, but you get interchangeable lenses, meaning that you can switch what sort of optic is on the front of your camera. If you're looking for an autofocus film camera, I would certainly look at some of the later autofocus cameras, maybe from the likes of Nikon, Canon, and Pentax, as opposed to the plasticky Minolta cameras and some of the early ones, since there can be problems with the focusing motor, the light meter. Same thing as I said about point and shoots, the electronics are very old, some of them are a little bit tired, maybe they're not going to function as far into the future as you might hope. When looking at film SLRs, no matter what, I would encourage you to look for something that has a manual exposure mode. It can be a great way to learn, and it is a great option if you want to grow into a camera as opposed to letting the camera control everything for you. Having the option is very, very nice, and there are times when you'll be extremely grateful that you have it, and you can save money on having to buy 2 cameras down the road when you go to look for one that does have manual exposure as an option. When talking about specific models, a lot of people cite the Pentax K1000 as a great starter camera. It is a student camera from back in the day. It's completely manual. It has a light meter built in. It's a great starting camera, and I definitely agree. But its popularity has definitely driven up its price in the used market, so I'd encourage maybe some slightly lesser known cameras. The Minolta X700 can be had for as little as $100 with a 50mm lens attached. It looks great, it's got the vintage look that everybody wants from a film camera, and it's a lot cheaper. I highly recommend it. It's very reliable as well. The added benefit of the Minolta X700 is that it has a program mode, giving you some options for auto exposure if you're shooting on the go, and that is a nice upgrade over the Pentax K1000, which is fully manual. If you're looking to choose a camera purely based on lens system, I think that Nikon is probably your best bet. The Nikon FE and FM, so as the FE2 and FM2 and so forth, are great places to start because it gets you into the Nikon F mount system at a much cheaper price than something like an F2 or an F3, which can be quite expensive. Those FE and FM cameras also have some of the pro features that you might get on the Nikon F series, but at a much cheaper price, and they're a little bit more compact, easier to put into a bag. A great starting camera, looks great too. One thing you might have noticed in common with most of my cameras is that I have a 50mm fixed focal length prime lens attached. My Nikon, I usually keep a 28 on there, it's a little bit wider, but you can often pick up these film cameras with a 50mm attached for the same price as you could for the body only, and it's usually worth it. They're fast, they're really beautiful lenses, and they hold up great today. Wonderful sharpness, wonderful detail. Most major camera manufacturers, Pentax, Minolta, Canon, Nikon, they all made incredible prime lenses that came on their film cameras, usually as a kit lens. Those 50mm, nifty 50s as they're often called, great place to start. And sometimes restricting your focal length to a single one can help with creativity, force you to think outside the box, and force you to move around, get down on one knee to take the picture, get it all in frame. It can be helpful in that sense. All right, to conclude, start by asking around, see what you can find in your own local circle, check your local thrift shops, ask your parents, ask your friends, see what cameras you can dig up. Second, keep in mind what it is you want to do with a camera. The same camera that's perfect for somebody else might not be perfect for you. I think that starting here is a great way to avoid frustration and end up with a camera that you're happy with not just today, but tomorrow and many, many years from now. Avoid going where the trends are. You don't necessarily need the same camera as your favorite YouTuber. The $10,000 Leica is beautiful and will take wonderful photos, but guess what? So will that Minolta X700 that's only $100 on eBay right now. Focusing on cameras that are a little bit off the beaten path will serve you in the long run, and I think that this is the best option today, especially with film photography, shooting all used cameras up in price. Hopefully this video was helpful. If it was, feel free to let me know. Let me know your favorite film camera. I make videos about sort of anything that I feel like. Mostly I make them for my own benefit, but if you got some enjoyment out of this, or if it was helpful, I hopefully wasn't too boring, and hopefully I entertained you with that. And with that, I'm going to leave it there.